So today we are going to tackle about culture, its meaning, characteristics, and functions. So what is culture? Culture is a comprehensive and encompassing term that includes what we have learned about our history, morals, customs, art, and habits. A culture is the complex of values, ideas, attitudes, and other meaningful symbols created by people to shape human behavior and the artifacts of that behavior as they are transmitted from one generation to the next. So this means customs, traditions, attitudes, values, norms, ideas, and symbols govern human actions. The members of a society not only endorse them but also mold their behavior accordingly. They are members of the society because of the traditions and customs which are common and which are passed down from generation to generation through the process of socialization. These common patterns designate culture. The definition of culture also highlights three important attributes of an individual's culture. The first is it is created by people evolving due to human activities and passed on to the succeeding generations. Second, the impact of cultural influence is both intangible and tangible. People's basic attitudes and values are a direct result of their cultural environment. Beliefs in freedom of speech and choice, heterosexuality, and God are products of human action. Additionally, people leave physical evidence of their culture through art and craft work, buildings, furniture, laws, and food. The last one is the cultural environment evolves, and it is most often evolves over lengthy periods. Changes in women's roles in the home and business and the outward desire for leisure time have come about quite slowly. Other changes, however, occur quicker. Clothing styles, for example, come and go rather hastily. And let's proceed to characteristics of culture. Number one, learned behavior. Culture is learned by each person in the course of his development in a particular society. Culture is transmitted from one generation to the other through learning. And unlearned behavior, such as knee-jerk, the eyes blinking, are purely physiological. On the other hand, shaking hands, shaving, etc. are cultural. Therefore, culture is learned. Number two, culture is abstract. Culture exists in the minds or habits of the members of society. Culture is the shared ways of doing and thinking. There are degrees of visibility of cultural behavior, ranging from persons' regularized activities to their internal reasons for so doing. We cannot see culture as such, we can only see human behavior. This behavior occurs in a regular patterned fashion and we call it culture. 3. Culture is a pattern of learned behavior. The definition of culture indicated that the learned behavior of people is patterned. Each person's behavior often depends upon some particular behavior of someone else. The point is that, as a general rule, behaviors are somewhat integrated or organized with the related behaviors of other persons. Number 4, culture is the products of behavior. Culture learnings are the products of behavior. As the person behaves, there occur changes in him. He acquires the ability to swim, to feel hatred towards someone, or to sympathize with someone. They have grown out of his previous behaviors. In both ways, human behavior is a result of behavior. The experience of other people are impressed on one as he grows up, and also many of his traits and abilities have grown out of his own past behaviors. Number 5, culture includes attitudes, values, knowledge. There is a widespread error in the thinking of many people who tend to regard ideas, attitudes, and notions they have as their own. It is easy to overestimate the uniqueness of one's own attitudes and ideas. When there is an when there is an agreement with other people, it is largely unnoticed. But when there is a disagreement or difference, one is usually conscious of it. 6. Culture also includes material objects. Man's behavior results in creating objects. Men were behaving when they made these things. To make these objects required numerous and various skills which human beings gradually built up through the ages. Man has invented something else and so on. Occasionally, one encounters the view that man does not really make steel or a battleship. This means material culture. This refers to the physical objects, resources, and spaces that people use to define their culture. These include homes, neighborhoods, cities, schools, offices, factories, tools, means of production, stores, and so forth. All of these physical aspects of a culture help to define its members' behaviors and perceptions. 7. Culture is shared by the members of society. The patterns of learned behavior and the results of behavior are possessed not by one or a few persons, but usually by a large proportion. Thus, many millions of persons share such behavior patterns as Christianity, the use of automobiles, or the English language. This means culture is not a possession of one person, it is indeed shared. Culture is shared, it is something adopted, used, believed, practiced, or possessed by more than one person. It depends upon group life for its existence. 8. Culture is superorganic. Culture is sometimes called superorganic. It implies that culture is somehow superior to nature. The word superorganic is useful when it implies that what may be quite a different phenomenon from a cultural point of view. A culture has a life of its own, which is symbolic rather than genetic. In this way, it is a living thing. It operates at a higher level of complexity than the organic, and it is superorganic. 9. Culture is pervasive. Culture is pervasive, it touches every aspect of life. Culture provides an unquestioned context within which individual action and response take place. Not only emotional but rational actions are governed by cultural norms. Number 10. Culture is a way of life. Culture means simply the way of life of a people or their design for a living. Clarkson and Kelly define it in his sense. A culture is a historically derived system of explicit and implicit designs for a living, which tends to be shared by all or especially designed members of a group. For instance, the adolescent cultural behavior can be generalized from regularities in dress, gadgets, mannerism, and conversations. 11. Culture is a human product. Culture is not a force operating by itself and independent of the human actors. There is an unconscious tendency to defy culture, to endow it with life and treat it as a thing. Culture is a creation of society and interaction and depends for its existence upon the continuance of society. Therefore, culture does not do anything of its own. It is a human product and is not independently endowed with life. 12. Culture is idealistic. Culture embodies the ideals and norms of a group. It is the sum total of the ideal patterns and norms of behavior of a group. Culture consists of the intellectual, artistic, and social ideals and institutions that the members of society profess and strive to confirm. Culture is idealistic in nature because it sets ideal goals before individuals, which is worth attaining. In other words, culture is the sum total of ideals and values of individuals in society. 13. Culture is transmitted among members of society. Persons learn cultural ways from persons. Many of them are handed down by their elders, parents, teachers, and others. Other cultural behaviors are handed up to elders. Some of the transmission of culture is among contemporaries. So, cultural ways are learned by persons from persons. Other cultural behaviors are handed up to elders. 14. Culture is continually changing. There is one fundamental and inescapable attribute of culture, the fact of unending change. Some societies sometimes change slowly, and hence, in comparison to other societies, seem not to be changing at all, but they are changing even though not obviously so. 15. Culture is variable. Culture varies from society to society, group to group. Culture varies from group to group within the same society. There are subcultures within a culture. Cluster of patterns which are both related to general culture of the society and yet distinguishable from it are called subcultures. 16. Culture is an integrated system. Culture possesses an order and system. Its various parts are integrated with each other, and any new element which is introduced is also integrated. This is known as holism, or the various parts of a culture being interconnected. All aspects of a culture are related to one another, and to truly understand a culture, one must learn about all of its parts, not only few. 17. Language is the chief vehicle of culture. Man lives not only in the present but also in the past and future. He can do this because he possesses a language that transmits what was learned in the past and enables him to transmit the accumulated wisdom to the next generation. A specialized language pattern serves as a common band to the members of the particular group or subculture. Although culture is transmitted in various ways, language is one of the most important vehicles for perpetuating cultural patterns. And now let's proceed to functions of culture. So we will review the functions that culture performs and assess whether culture can be a liability for an organization. Culture performs some functions within an organization. So the first functions of culture is culture defines situations. Each culture has many subtle cues which define each situation. It reveals whether one should prepare to fight, run, love, or make love. For example, when someone elderly across the street, I lay my hand to hold her. This means laying my hand is a sign of respect because this is one of culture to help others. Number 2, culture defines attitudes, values, and goals. Each person learns in his culture what is good, true, and beautiful. Attitudes, values, and goals are defined by the culture, while the individual normally learns them as unconsciously as he learns the language. Attitude are tendencies to feel and act in certain ways. Values are measures of goodness or desirability. For example, empathizing with others in times of needs, or pakikiramay. Third is culture defines myth, legends, and the supernatural. Myths and legends are an important part of every culture. They may inspire, reinforce effort and sacrifice, and bring comfort in bereavement. Whether they are true is sociologically unimportant. This means myth, legends, and the supernatural are human constructs that attempt to explain our interactions with the unknown. Naturally, we use familiar things to describe unfamiliar things, either through metaphor or simile. Since our culture is literally our collective interpretation of everything we know, it shapes those unknowns as well. And let's go to culture and society. The relationship between society, culture, and personality is stressed by Ralph Linton. A society is an organized group of individuals. A culture is an organized group of learned responses. The individual is a living organism capable of independent thought, feeling, and action. But with his independence limited and all his resources profoundly modified by contact with their society and the culture in which he develops. So, culture and society are intricately related. A culture consists of the objects of a society, whereas a society consists of the people who share a common culture. And that's all for today's discussion. I hope you learned something and see you on my next video. Bye!